June the 7th, 1944. Omaha Beach, Normandy. The air still smells of cordite and salt. The tide rolls in thick with debris, shattered landing craft, crates of ammunition, and the occasional helmet floating in. On the sand, hundreds of men in olive drab uniforms move like an army of ants, hauling, shouting, rebuilding. Sergeant William Bill Harper of the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers wipes the grime from his face and squints toward the horizon. The water is dotted with ships, Liberty vessels, LSTs, freighters, all waiting their turn to offload supplies. But there's a problem. There's no port. The closest major harbour, Cherbourg, is still in German hands. Every other channel port from Calais to Le Havre has been destroyed, mined, or heavily defended. The Allied invasion, the largest in human history, is on the brink of paralysis unless they can find a way to move thousands of tons of fuel, tanks, and ammunition off the ships and onto French soil every single day. Without a port, the entire operation could stall within weeks. Harper looks down the beach where bulldozers roar through the surf, flattening the sand into crude roadways. Nearby, British engineers with the Royal Navy Construction Corps are shouting over the noise of cranes and winches. Floating steel sections, each the size of a tennis court, bob in the tide, tethered to tugboats. This is Operation Mulberry. Months before the invasion, in secret workshops scattered across Britain, thousands of engineers, welders and shipwrights had laboured on something that sounded more like a fantasy than a military plan. A floating harbour. A port made not of stone, but of steel and concrete. One that could be towed across the English Channel and assembled like a massive puzzle under enemy fire. To the skeptics, it was madness. But to men like Brigadier Bruce White, Chief Engineer of the British War Office, it was the only option. "We can build the harbour," he told Eisenhower, "if we can bring the sea under control." And now, on this chaotic morning after D-Day, the first pieces of that dream are arriving. From the west, tugs appear towing colossal concrete blocks, Phoenix caissons, each over 60 metres long and weighing 6,000 tons. They move slowly, stately, like grey castles adrift on the tide. Royal Navy crews guide them into position offshore, where they're sunk in a precise line to form a breakwater. Within hours, the sea begins to calm behind them. Farther out, smaller craft tow floating piers called whales, flexible steel roadways that will stretch from ship to shore. Each section rocks with the waves, but together they form a seamless chain strong enough to support tanks, trucks and men. Harper stands on the beach, watching as the first section locks into place with a metallic clang. "Looks like it might just work," says a corporal beside him. Harper grins, though he doesn't quite believe it yet. In London, General Eisenhower receives the first status report from Normandy. The message is brief, understated, but momentous. Mulberry A and B are proceeding. First pierhead connected. Supplies moving ashore. The world doesn't yet know it, but the Allies are about to build a harbour larger than any in France, right where yesterday men had died just to reach dry sand. The tide rises. The work continues through the night. Searchlights to sweep across the water as cranes lift cargo, one crate at a time. For the engineers, there is no glory, no medals, only mud, exhaustion, and the endless hum of machinery. But by dawn, the outline of a city has begun to emerge from the sea. June 10th, you have 3 days after D-Day. A pale dawn settles over the channel, calm for the first time in weeks. The sound of gulls mixes with the rumble of diesel engines and hammering steel. Out beyond the surf line, dozens of tugboats, barges and landing craft move in steady patterns, towing colossal sections into place. From the cliffs above Omaha Beach, it looks like an enormous construction site floating on the sea. Lieutenant Commander Edward Ted Hall, a Royal Navy harbour engineer, wipes condensation from his binoculars and studies the scene. "It's working," he murmurs, though no one hears him over the roar of the waves. He's been awake for nearly 48 hours. The Mulberry Harbour, codenamed Mulberry A at Omaha, and Mulberry B at Arromanches for the British is beginning to take shape. Below, US Army engineers guide the arrival of gooseberry blockships, old freighters, scuttle deliberately to form an inner breakwater. Explosive charges detonate in sequence, sending fountains of seawater into the air as the hulks sink perfectly in line. Within minutes, the ocean inside the ring of wrecks goes still, shielded from the wind. It's a miracle of precision in a place where chaos ruled just days earlier. Now the work shifts to the heart of the operation, the Phoenix caissons and whale roadways. Each Phoenix is a monolith of reinforced concrete, hollow inside and fitted with valves to control its sinking. Tugboats maneuver them into position like chess pieces, and when the signal comes, engineers open the valves. The massive blocks descend slowly, water gushing from vents, until they rest on the seabed. A line of 20 caissons stretches across the horizon, forming an artificial breakwater 2 miles long. Once anchored, they become the spine of a living harbour. Inside the sheltering wall, the whales, floating steel bridges supported by pontoons, extend from ships to the shore. Each segment locks into the next with massive pins, creating a roadway that rises and falls with the tide. "All right! Bring the truck forward!" Sergeant Harper yells over the clatter. A 2.5-ton GMC truck rolls cautiously across the new causeway, its tyres spraying seawater. The steel decking flexes but holds. Men cheer from the beach. For the first time in history, supplies are flowing from ship to shore over a completely man-made port. Behind the scenes, the operation runs with clockwork precision. Cargo ships queue offshore, unloading jeeps, artillery, and fuel barrels. Amphibious DUKWs ferry men and equipment to staging areas beyond the dunes. Every crate is tagged, logged, and dispatched, an intricate ballet of logistics that defies the tide itself. The British harbour at Arromanches, Mulberry B, is equally alive. Royal engineers direct cranes unloading ammunition, while American Seabees patch damaged sections hit by stray shells. French fishermen watch from the cliffs, astonished at the sight. A floating city bristling with cranes, pontoons, and ships of every size. By June 14th, just 1 week after D-Day, the Mulberries are fully operational. Over 20,000 tons of supplies are moving ashore each day. Tanks roll straight off Liberty's ships onto the causeways. Bulldozers push forward into France, carving new roads from the hedgerows. On the evening of June 15th, a BBC war correspondent broadcasts live from Omaha Beach. What you see behind me is perhaps the greatest engineering feat of the war. The Americans call it Mulberry, a harbour built from scratch on the sands of Normandy. The ships don't dock. The docks came to them. As night falls, the harbour glows faintly with lamps and flares. The sea laps gently against concrete and steel. The men of the Royal Navy and US Army Corps of Engineers stand watch, tired but proud. Ted Hall looks out at the horizon, a line of ships stretching as far as the eye can see, and allows himself a rare smile. "We built a port," he says softly, "without a single dock." He doesn't yet know what's coming. A storm is brewing beyond the channel, and by this time next week, the entire harbour will face its greatest test. June 19th, 1944. The sky over Normandy darkens. A low, eerie wind sweeps across the channel, snapping the Allied flags that line the causeways of Mulberry A. Men look up, uneasy. The weather had been fair for weeks, but tonight the barometer is dropping fast. By nightfall, the English Channel becomes a cauldron. Waves rise higher than the floating piers, crashing over the pontoons. The wind howls at nearly 60 miles per hour, tearing at mooring lines and snapping cables like thread. Sergeant Harper braces against the gale, his poncho flapping wildly. "Get that truck back," he shouts, but the sound is swallowed by the storm. A crane tips forward on the quay, its boom twisting before collapsing into the surf with a deafening crash. Steel groans as the floating pier, the whale roadway, begins to buckle. Farther out, the anchored caissons, the Phoenixes, take the brunt of the fury, each one weighing thousands of tons. heaves against the tide. Engineers race to secure the valves, but one by one, the concrete giants begin to crack. Sections of the breakwater vanish into the waves, leaving gaping holes for the sea to pour through. In the blackness, the radio crackles with frantic voices. "Mulberry A is breaking apart. Repeat, Omaha Harbour is going under." The storm rages for 3 full days. When it finally passes, the scene at Omaha is devastation. The American harbour, Mulberry A, is gone. Half-sunk Phoenix caissons litter the coastline, their tops protruding like tombstones. The whale roadways are twisted, their joints wrenched apart. Landing craft lie overturned along the shore. Ted Hall, arriving from the British sector, steps from a DUKW and looks out over the wreckage. "Good God," he whispers. "It's finished, yet not all is lost." 50 miles east, the British Mulberry at Arromanches, Mulberry B, has survived. Its engineers, better shielded by the natural curve of the bay, managed to hold the breakwater intact through sheer determination. The harbour is battered but operational. Within days, it becomes the lifeline of the Allied advance. To keep the invasion moving, everything now funnels through Arromanches. Day and night, Liberty ships unload their cargoes of fuel, ammunition and rations. The beaches become a sea of motion, jeeps grinding through wet sand, cranes lifting crates, men shouting orders through the roar of engines. By July, the surviving Mulberry handles an astonishing 7,000 tons of cargo daily, more than the port of Dover itself. Every bullet, every drop of fuel feeding the armies pushing inland flows through that floating port. Captain John Lovell of the Royal Engineers writes home, "It feels strange standing on the sea itself, watching tanks roll past. It's as if the ocean has decided to help us win." Through summer and autumn, the harbour endures storms, sabotage, and relentless wear. And yet, it never stops. By the time Allied forces liberate Paris in August, over 1 million tons of supplies have come ashore through the Mulberry harbours. Months later, as the Allies stand victorious in France, Eisenhower reflects on what made it possible. Not just courage or numbers, but ingenuity, the quiet triumph of engineers who dared to build a port where none existed. Standing amid the rusting remains of a Phoenix caisson, Ted Hall runs a hand along the pitted concrete and smiles faintly. "We built a harbour," he says, "that floated across the sea, and with it, an army that crossed a continent." The tide rises again, covering the wreckage. The war moves on, but the ghosts of Mulberry remain, silent monuments to a victory born not of conquest, but construction.